Welcome back to Spotlight. I'd like to welcome my guest, Brother Alan Wheatley, candidate for the 7th District, Sister Shana Smith, at-large candidate, and Brother Bertrand Washasha, ex-Leadsom, at-large candidate. Welcome to Spotlight.
Thank you. Good evening.
It's good of you to come. I've been having a lot of difficulty in getting candidates.
Been waiting on the call.
To come, to sit and have a nice chat together so that persons could be able to compare and get a look at the views and the abilities of those who would represent us. So I can't express enough appreciation for you being my guest this evening. I want to give each of you a minute to introduce yourself and make a brief presentation. Starting with my good brother Wheatley.
Hi, thank you, Brother Comrade. My name is Alan Wheatley. I am here representing Party of the People. I am the candidate in the 7th District. I am an individual that is fairly well known. I have spent a lot of my professional life working between quasi-organizations such as Social Security Board, government, and the like, as well as some element of the private sector. And the platform that we are running on basically looks at focusing on areas such as the economy, education, and the environment as principal areas of focus, as well as social services. And one of the things that we are specifically trying to bring to the agenda when it comes to matter of politics here in the BVI is greater empathy by way of the political directorate in terms of the way in which we deal with people and greater compassion. Thank you.
Thank you, my brother. Sister Shana.
Good evening. My name is Shana Smith, and I am one of the 4 territorial candidates of the People's Patriotic Alliance. And I can't say enough how important it is for this dialogue to take place tonight, and I hope the viewers are tuning in and anxiously waiting to hear the discussion. Our platform, we have 7 areas that we talk about, and all of them are interconnected. Good governance in the economy or economic development, social development, healthcare and wellness, as well as touching on the environment and infrastructure and education. Can't forget education. And one of the things that we want to see in terms of, as Alan was saying, the change in the way we do politics in the BVI, that it is not just around personality and popularity, but that the real issues are tackled and real solutions are being put forward as to what needs to take place in the country in order for us to really develop and go to that next level.
Thank you. Brother Washasha.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Bertrand Washasha, ex-Leadsom, independent territorial at-large candidate to the 2nd House of Assembly. My platform is a primary platform, a triple E platform, the environment, education and culture, and economic empowerment. A secondary platform of health, planning, waste management, and social services. I too am looking forward to the dialogue here tonight.
All right, thank you very much. I'm trying to chew gum and walk at the same time. So yeah,
We're going to get there.
yeah, there with me.
We're going to get there.
Yeah, I'm a fan with you, Brother Wheatley. Times are really difficult now. Our main market, the United States, is experiencing some economic challenges. Europe is experiencing some economic challenges, and we had a fall off of tourists coming to the country. What will you do and your party do to help to spur on the economy, get more business into the country, and improve our economic life here in the BVA.
Well, the précis answer for that basically is found in the first two aspects of the economic plan that I launched a few weeks ago. Primarily, what I explained is that we're going to have to focus on what are the immediate revenue sources that we have control over, which are tourism and construction, in terms of generating some economic activity. In so doing, there's a lot of investment still needs to be done with those to enhance them. So we're going to have to look at redirecting the way in which we deal with our expenditure with respect to the current situation as it is, and make the requisite investments that are necessary, such as infrastructural development in facilities on the beach, developing water-based activities. A whole host of things need to go into tourism. Construction just simply needs to get permits being approved, so construction, whether commercial or residential, can take place. In the second year, what we were looking at areas where you can now expand your revenue bases, looking at things such as transatlantic shipping, developing the mega yacht industry. We talk a lot about that in the Eastern Harbor Development Project and other harbor development projects throughout the territory. There are a lot of expansion opportunities in areas of telecommunication, in areas of fishing, that are things that the government are already involved in, that with some diversification of the strategies can move forward. Then of course you need support for all of this, and things such as a business bureau that is properly organized and structured and the like, some of the areas that we're going to have to look at to bring the support base and developing the national bank.
You have a clock in your head.
There we go.
You were on there?
Yeah. Shana, given the conditions this way, challenges in our main markets, how are we going to increase revenue generation into the territory?
I think, well, first off, let me start back with the vision, because this is one of the things that we're lacking in terms of, we talk a lot about ideas and programs and projects, but we have to get to the place first and foremost of what is the vision for the country, as far as if we are going to be global leaders in financial services and tourism, or have a competitive advantage. We need to start from that perspective as far as what is it that we want. Because one of the things that concerns us when you look around, there's a lack of economic plan, whether it's a 2-year plan or a 5-year plan. And then you go into your sectors, so whether it's tourism, or financial services. We're also looking at emerging markets or rebuilding markets such as agriculture, where there's economic potential there that needs to be invested into. So we have a two-tier approach as far as with developing or spurring economic growth. We've had negative growth for the last 3 years. And watching the BBC tonight, they're talking about in Mongolia, they're projected to have a rate of 10% for the next 10 years, based on the resources that they have. So our resources is our environment. And as Alan mentioned, we need to take a serious look at our product and what it is we want to do. And one of the things that we have been pushing out there is, on top of cruise tourism and overnight visitors, to enhance what we have in terms of promoting our culture and making that an intricate part of what it is we do, so that there is something for people to come to, that when we market it, we're putting those things out there that make us unique and different. So we're looking for that BVI experience, and not necessarily trying to say we're competing with St. Martin or Jamaica, because they have casinos or other types of entertainment that some persons may want. And to look also in terms of those markets, because again, a plan would tell us these are the emerging markets that we need to tackle. Precisely, not just saying, well, maybe we should go Brazil, but knowing for certain that this is where we would want to go and move forward from there.
Okay. What about you, Washasha? What are we going to do to spur economic growth, economic development, get more tourists into the country?
Well, I Edgewick, I think both Alan and Shayna touch on quite a few of the points that I have in my platform. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk to pulling it all together. And I feel a couple of things that we need to do that would really get us moving. And one of them for sure is getting the Ministry of Tourism and Environment established. I feel if we were to bring tourism, the environment, agriculture, fisheries, culture, all the different parts of the pie, so to speak, together under one heading, that would be a tremendous step in the right direction. In addition to that, I think we also need to focus more on our plans, the way we do things, you know. Shayna and Alan both mentioned plans. I'll mention the overarching plan, which is the National Integrated Development Strategy and Plan, as something that I have in my platform as a must do for us here in this country if we are at all serious about moving the economy forward. Then once we cover those two areas, then just simple things like cutting back on waste, more prioritizing. If we put money, investment into our environment, keeping that in tip-top shape, that is going to pay the kind of dividends that we're looking for.
Everybody talked about, well, let me pose a question. Everybody talked about strengthening the product and looking to get new markets and so on. But we are a little island a couple of little islands off Puerto Rico and off St. Thomas, and the major markets are a considerable distance away. What are the markets that you all are thinking about getting into to get these new tourists, since our major market is having some challenges? What specifically are those markets you're talking about, and how are you going to get those persons into the BVA? We're going to take a break, and when we come back, you're going to start to answer that question, Brother Washasha. We'll be right back after these words from our sponsors.
Spotlight is brought to you by CCT Global Communication, DataPro, Orion Law, Clarence Thomas Limited, Virgin Island Motors, and Bolos Wholesale Cash and Carry.
Welcome back to Spotlight. I'm Edgewick, and we're having a discussion, economic discussion, with three of the candidates in the upcoming general election. Brother Alan Wheatley of the Party of the People, candidate for the 7th District; Shayna Smith, People's Patriotic Alliance at-large candidate, and independent candidate at-large, Bertrand Washasha Exletsum. And we left off with the questions about spurring economic activity in the territory. What specific markets would you identify, and how would you bring those persons from those markets into the BVA?
Well, Edgewick, I have a three-tiered approach. First, I would focus on, we already have a booming financial services market that caters towards, a certain part of the world, particularly in the East. So I think it ain't really rocket science there. We could be doing the double approach, where we advertise our financial services, we also push our tourism. So that's with respect to a new market far away. I would also still continue to focus on some of the areas closer at hand. We have here in the Caribbean, we have Central, South America, and I wouldn't give up on my North American market either. I also feel an area that we've kind of neglected a bit is if you want to call it the mother country, in terms of the European connection and in particular the English market. So those would be some of the markets I would focus on. In terms of getting the people here, I think I would focus on, we obviously need to do some work in terms of our airlift. And my approach immediately would be to look at a national airline and look at what we can get from the eastern seaboard into what we have right now, and what kind of changes you would need to make to be able to bring bigger aircraft. So that would be my initial approach at getting new markets and actually bringing the people here.
Okay. Shana?
In addition to, well, I agree with what he said as far as looking for those countries that have strong economies or their economies have rebounded. The challenge would be in terms of distance, because, I mean, if tourists want to go to a particular place, they will find a way to get there. But the idea is, as the host country, we need to make it as easy as possible. So things as, people may think that a national airline is something that's far-fetched, but there's a way to fast-track that based on what we have already established in terms of our local companies. Another area of tourism that we need to look at that I think is we've kind of marginalized it for a while is sports tourism, in terms of whether it's regionally or globally. Our organizations here, most of them have international connections. So, we're talking about from January to December, we have opportunity that we need to look into as far as hosting regional events or international events if we have the facilities, because this is the other side of the coin where we need to make sure, again, physical infrastructure, not just talking about roads, but the recreational facilities. We need to make sure we're maintaining our gyms and all of these types of things in order for us to host, whether it's FIFA World Cup qualifiers, cricket qualifiers, track and field meets. Swimming is something that's emerging and has a lot of potential in terms of talking about things like training camps for countries that during their winter months they're able to come to the Virgin Islands. And so a sports tourist, so to speak, is one of those markets that we need to tap into, that requires probably minimum investment in infrastructure, because we already have certain things already in place that we need to just enhance and to move forward on that.
Thank you. Brother Alan Whitley?
Yeah, thank you. Well, I think my fellow brothers and sisters here, right on target, and I wouldn't unduly repeat what they said. What I would do is actually expound upon it a little bit, and I'm glad to hear them make reference to two important things. One is the airlift situation and diversifying the type of tourism product you want to offer. In terms of what Washasha was saying about the airlift, one of the things sort of wrestling with right now is whether you really want to go the route of expanding the airport immediately in terms of the runway, or do you want to look at what the Sena says, a national carrier with in conjunction with pre-existing locals, which is one of the things I'm having some discussions with local businessmen about, or whether you want to have a national airline. There are a lot of different ways you can go about it, but we have to just recognize airlift is an issue, and we have to address it because we're becoming a serious minority in the Caribbean community. When she spoke about the whole issue of sports tourism, there are also things such as health tourism that are out there that are options, and that's one of the things we're looking at when the hospital was first envisaged, is to get into that certain tier of treatment that you can make business opportunities out of. And as we look at the markets that we currently have in terms of the North American markets, I mean, financial services has done a very good job of going into the Asian markets. Those are areas that we can expound upon, as well as the Latin American markets. But whatever we do, we have to change the way we go about our marketing, and we have to offer packages, and we have to join what the rest of the world is doing.
Thank you.
could I just add very quickly one thing, Edwin? I think it's important. Another potential area that I think we've really been overlooking that we need to focus a bit more on is what I would call educational or research type tourism. And we already have the Marine Center there at the college, and we have so much to offer in this country in terms of research potential. So again, I think that's a big one, because not only could we be getting the people, but we could be moving our whole educational system to that next level. We get some endowments. I mean, we could really change the ball game. Which I just wanted to.
You want to make a comment?
Touch on that.
No, basically I'm not in agreement, because the whole thing, when we talk about diversifying the economy, we tend to just think about new sectors or new industry. But it is just like with Apple computer. When it came out, there was an evolution to what it is you have now as far as the MacBook. And we have to approach our economic development in the same way, and not it be we're going to stick with the model from the 1980s and think that that is going to continue to work for us in the 24th century, while the world is changing every day. So we have to basically not just think outside the box, but probably build a new box, you know, as far as how we're going to move the country forward over the next 20 years, and where do we see ourselves going.
Okay. Anything else you want to add?
No, well, you know, as we continue along the lines, a lot of other areas you look at, even the existing water-based activities that we have now, the kite jam the other day up in the Virgin Gorda is an example of the kind of things that can happen. Surfing, we have some of the best surfing around, but we don't develop the market for those persons. We just, as Shana is saying, traditionally bare boats, mega yachts is a whole area to be developed. There's a lot we can do, and we don't necessarily have to be the ones to spend the money. There are a lot of people would like to come here and be part of the development. We just have to learn the art of controlling development, not let development control us, but we control the development, and we're educated and experienced enough now to do a better job of that.
Would you expand the airport? Would that be an immediate action you'd like to see taking place?
It seems like the obvious thing in terms of saying if we build it, they will come. But the other side of that coin is that we have to negotiate with airlines in terms of ensuring that they will come. And they will only come if we have done the proper marketing in those markets where they fly out of. Because, you know, the airline isn't going to come because you have a new airport and it only has 30 people on it when they can hold 100. So we have to look very carefully in terms of long term, because that airport expansion is probably a 5-year project. So in those 5 years, we can sit down, have discussions as far as what a national carrier can actually accomplish. If flying out of Miami is a reality, that's something that can be accomplished in 2-3 years' time, then that is what we need to be thinking about in the short term, and pushing the marketing now to start getting persons here. In the immediate term, start that economic engine going again, and then from there, see what is next.
Okay. Question for you, Brother Wheatley. There's a lot of things to do in terms of enhancing the market and getting airlifts and all these things we're talking about. Should we go to borrow more money to get these things done as a preparation or investment into our tourism our products, so that we can get more tourists in? Or should we use what we have existing and the money that we have, market and get money first? What would be the strategic plan for developing the transportation mechanism, the infrastructure, and simultaneously developing the product?
Carmel, that is a question that I have been saying for the longest, and this is about 2 years now, that we are not recognizing our real economic situation here. There is going to be no borrowing, because you've already met your borrowing criteria limits. That's a reality come November 8th. Whoever walks in is not just going to get up and say, well, I want 10, 20, 30. It's not going to happen. Period. Secondly, you don't have any latitude in terms of your savings because they're all tied to the borrowing criteria. You are locked. So in phase one of the economic plan that I propose specifically focuses on getting tourism and that whole construction situation going so that you can generate revenue. When you start to generate revenue, you create opportunities by way of potential for lending and the like. Past those things, that's why you see when I said what I said about airlift, it would be great to extend the runway, but there's a reality where you're going to find the money. So maybe you really got to start looking at maybe leasing some planes, getting some airlift out of Miami if you can fall in conjunction with your marketing plan that Shana is talking about and really get things moving. And that might be immediately like a $1 or $2 million per, let's say, every 6 months, and that gets you going because you can find that. And then when you get airlift and those things and things moving along, then you can start talking about expanding your airport. But you got to think differently because the situation that we're facing now does not give you a lot of latitude.
The same question to you. What you gonna do first? You gonna try to get money to fix the product, or you going to try to an infrastructure, or how are you going to go about it given our financial constraints as described by Mr. Weekly?
Well, Alan can bear me out on this as a former financial secretary. As far as one of the priorities that we have been putting out there is we need to get our financial house in order in government, because government is the largest employer, largest consumer, and we need to ensure that when we have a budget of $280 million, we're actually spending this in the best way possible, which, as we're seeing and saying, that's not the case now. So we need to look at our financial management processes to ensure that whatever cost savings can be realized are realized to give us, immediate revenue streams. Looking at in terms of our tax and fee structures, some of them need to be revised. We've had a fiscal committee, I think it was last year, the House of Assembly had put one together, but no recommendations as far as I know came back. So we need to look at how government is run, because $280 million, we throw this figure around as if it's nothing, but when you multiply that over 5 years, you start getting into the billions of dollars and climbing. So we have that money in spite of the shortfalls in terms of the economic fall off. So we start there in terms of, we don't want to talk about having to go and tax, because as he said, there are guidelines that we have to abide by in terms of borrowing. So it's not that we can just walk in a bank and come back out, and say we have a loan for $100 million to do whatever we want to in terms of whether it's road, water distribution, network, or electricity supply, you name it. So,
but you talk about restructuring the taxes and looking to see how to our revenue, look at our revenue streams. Mm-hmm. What are you talking about when you say that? And how are you going to reorganize our revenue streams and generate more revenue if you're not talking about raising taxes?
Okay, one of the things that we, coming out of the Ministry of Finance, and this was something that was publicly spoken about in terms of output budgeting. And as Wasasha spoke about earlier, in terms of having that national plan, that plan is executed through the public service. So if we have a budget system that says that each department has a certain allocation, but they have to perform and produce certain outputs. Okay, so if we talk about our business sector, these are supported by departments such as customs, immigration, labor. We complain all the time about these services, but yet these departments have about $2 million budget every year. So we have to change the way in terms of how government performs. When we think about things like fees, we are producing services and subsidizing them. So it's very hard to, say if I'm going to charge $50 for something and it might actually cost me $100 to produce. But based on the current budgeting system, it's hard to see that. So we have to adapt basically a quasi-business model. Just like how you run a company, it's not about for profit, but it is more about performance.
Okay, but about what comes first? We have to fix our product to sell, or we have to sell what we have and use what infrastructure we have?
What comes first is we have to fix the way how we just do things. Because if you could even go and borrow money, as you've been, understand we can't. If you could even go out there and borrow that money, if you come back and you're behaving and acting in the same way we've been behaving and acting, that ain't really going anywhere. So I really strongly feel that we have to look more at stewardship. We have to look more at planning. We have to get more value for our money. As I say, we could do more with less. We waste a lot. There are so many things that we could do that would make a great big difference. Yes, we have a certain amount of money coming in. I mean, thank God the financial services is still, relatively buoyant. So, we have money to work with. I think from where I sit, it really and truly is all about stewardship.
What about investment, foreign, local investment in the economy? A lot has been said about our need for investment and direct foreign investment. What's your take on that? What's your view on direct foreign investment and the balance between local and foreign investment?
We need investment. I mean, nobody is arguing with the point that you do need investment. You need foreign direct investment and you need local investment. I think the big question is the balance, I'm saying that for the last 40 years we've put all our emphasis, just about everything has been geared towards the foreign. You see, I think if we put more emphasis on the local approach, if we, for instance, put in place our National Development Corporation and make it a reality, put the instruments, the framework in place to even facilitate the local input, into your development process. I think that is the way we need to be going right now, because it doesn't make sense if the money. Let me back up. I think there's a miss. It's almost a fantasy when people say, quote unquote, that it's money coming in, right? I think what really is going on, the environment, the country is generating the money. Okay? Whether it be a hotel, it's sailing, diving, whatever. The product is what is generating this money. Many times when a development or a developer come in here, they don't even get money themselves until they can present approval from the government. So once you begin to understand, as Brother Allen said, once you begin to understand the way things happen, we have enough intelligence now, we have enough local money available, enough local potential for investment, where, as Shana said earlier, we have to be thinking outside the box right now, and that's basically what I'm advocating.
The same question, the balance between foreign and local investment. We need it. Everybody's agreeing that we need investment. Mm-hmm. What kind of investment do we need, and how we are going to get that investment started?
I think it goes back again to tying into what's the country's vision. Because if I'm a foreign investor, I want to know that if I make an investment into a particular business interest, that there is a plan or in place as far as the government that will protect my investment. I think that's one of the key things that needs to be in place, in addition to making sure we're business friendly, and services that are needed are there. But I agree with what Alan said. We have to control development and not let it control us. Somebody just can't show up with a briefcase and say, I'm going to do this, and we just bend over backwards. We need to have frameworks in place saying that, we allow X amount to happen based on this, and there has to be benefits for the country, for the people. When he spoke about the national corporation, the first thing came to my mind is Prospect Reef. Here's an economic opportunity that we're here basically sitting on. Government bought it a few years back, and in the absence of saying we have a business plan, yes, it's going to cost some money to renovate, but here it is where you tap into local revenue in terms of you raise share, you offer shares in the company. Right now, government is a sole shareholder, and raise the capital. And we can also allow for foreign investors to come in, but let's say we restrict that to 30%, and the rest 70 has to be between government and local persons, so that we can move that forward, because that would be an asset to our tourism product as far as Prospect Reef, rebuilding it, putting in conference centers, refurbishing rooms, bringing it back to that flagship status that it had when I knew it growing up, and and do things in those type of creative solutions instead of it always having to be we have to go to the bank. There are persons that are willing to say, if somebody wants to just buy a share for $1,000, that's $1,000 that can add up, that will go a longer way in terms of how we get things done, and it not necessarily solely depend on government, but engage the community now in the development of the country.
The balance is obviously between foreign and local investment. How you plan to manage that balance, and how is that going to play in your economic plans?
Well, I like what Shana said, and there's a reason why I like what she said when she talked about the economic plan. As a consultant, I have a number of people that approach me externally, interested in doing business in the BVI. And one of the principal reasons why a lot of them don't move any further than preliminary discussions is because you cannot, as a businessman, as a consultant here in the BVI, articulate to anybody intelligently how this place runs, what direction it is going to go in. So who's going to take up 10 million, 50 million, 100 million, 500 million and put in a place that you can't understand how it operates? So the whole aspect of planning is very critical to this country moving forward for any type of investment, whether local or foreign. When I spoke about this whole economic plan, it's because currently I'm nervous. I'm actually nervous. I haven't been nervous in the BVI in my entire life. But I'm nervous now because I understand what is transpiring. And if we are going to deal with this situation here, our first thing that we have to bear in mind is we have to restructure our existing revenue sources. Secondly, we got to look for new revenue sources. We have to generate money to provide stability. As Shana and they were talking about, I spoke about third year, accrual accounting, dealing with much more budgetary control and the like. When you get your house in order, and you can actually demonstrate to the world that you can manage your own affairs, then you can move on to things such as increasing your borrowing criteria, whether with the UK, directly dealing with banks here, whether you want to go to bond ratings, issue bonds. There's a lot of things that you can do. And when you get to that stage, then people look at you seriously and say, okay, if you can do that with your own economic situation, then I could put money in. But you got to be able to manage your own affairs first.
Okay.
Can I just add one point there, because that is so key. In the debate that was held by the Chamber of Commerce a few weeks back, and they spoke about the report that the Financial Times did and the high standing that we had in two categories, but then we're absent in all the rest, which are very key to business in terms of being business friendly and economic potential. It's nice to have a quality of life, but what is the future of that quality of life if your country does not have a defined economic potential? So we need to be able to say to an investor, come in, set up shop for the next 10 years because we have projected growth of 5% and growing, because government has a handle on what is happening in the country. And that is what politicians are supposed to do, make policy that ensure the future of the country is bright.
Okay. We're going to take a break, but I want to answer the question of foreign local partnerships and the issue of fronting. Right after these words from our sponsors. Keep it locked right here at the Spotlight.
This program is sponsored by the law firm of J.S. Archibald & Co. and by the trust company J.S. Archibald Trust Services Limited, both of Roadtown, Tortola, BVI.
Welcome back to Spotlight. I'm Ed Juenka, and I'm here with our brother Alan Whitley of the People's Party of the People. He's a candidate for the 7th District, and Sister Shana Smith, she's of the People's Patriotic Alliance, and she's an at-large candidate, and an independent at-large candidate, brother Bertrand Washasha Exletsum, and we're talking economics and getting the economy going. And we left off talking about Washington.
We were talking about fronting.
Fronting, yes, fronting. But I have to rely on the young people to think about this part too high about my age.
I know you there for
think about a spot there, right? But brother Alan, we're gonna start with you. The relationship between the foreign local partnership. What's your proposal for that? Is that something that we need, or is it that we can go it alone right now and get our locals more involved in the development of the country?
But you've always been able to get the locals involved in the development of the country, because some of the arguments, like for instance, we don't have the skill set when it comes to executing a number of the projects here. Those kind of things are ludicrous. An example, post the hospital is James Stadman down there dealing with it right now. I mean, that's an example of what transpired. I remember when I was FS, we made some specific criteria on the airport in terms of having actual joint ventures, not just arbitrary agreements.
But we are talking about joint ventures and we're talking about capital funding.
So what I'm saying is that we've already had those things in place and we've already demonstrated that we have the skill set. It will depend on each particular scenario project that we're dealing with to determine how you'd want to go about dealing with it. There are some advantages bringing foreign skills depending on what kind of project it is, especially on a technical nature, it will be of great advantage. You don't want to be here, for instance, reinventing the wheel on things that are already well done in the international arena. But at the same token, you don't want to be doing something here that we already know how to do and bring somebody in. Like, I don't advocate under the peril of the sun bringing anybody in here to do construction, except from a management perspective. We have all the other requisites are in place. If you do need somebody, it might be a specialized area like in the hospital. You bring in 1 or 2 people who built hospitals before, and that's it. Engineering, what's that? And the rest of it, we're going to have the skill set to do. Let us find the requisite employment, and that's where we build our CVs and be able to now go in other areas, even go back to those areas and do what we have to do. We do not give all people enough chances to do what they have to do. And it's not that they don't know how to do it. You just don't give them the opportunity.
But what would be the relationship in terms of ownership, though? Who's going to keep the money and where the money is going to go?
Well, you don't have to ask me that. We'll have to have majority ownership. Without a doubt. Because what we are interested in you coming to do is bringing something to enhance and help, not to control. I made that clear before. I am not pro anybody coming to control anything here in the BVI. We will work with anybody. I have no problem fostering any relationship with anybody. I have business partners all over the world that I deal with business with, but I am the premier and front runner when you operate inside of the BVI. And you have to set those parameters. I do it in business, and the same thing will happen as far as I'm concerned when it comes to matters of government. You could bring all the money in the world. You don't have to own 51%. What you have to do is bring your finances, and we keep the other part in place, and we proceed from there.
Well, what's your view on that? The relationship between foreign and local investment.
I concur with him. Public-private partnership is something where, is one of those things that is misunderstood as far as how it's supposed to work. And what I don't like, which you alluded to in terms of before we went to the break as far as fronting, I just go and get the trade license for the person and then they come in and take up the mechanics of everything. But we as a people, we put ourselves in a disadvantaged position because 51% of the shares, and then if those people walk away, they're gone with the money in addition to all of the technical capacity because there wasn't the right relationship constructed there. So as he used the example for the hospital, we don't have to bring in a contractor from outside to build a hospital. If we need an engineer to advise somebody that deals with health services to advise on the project, then you construct your project team to include those persons, and it's a lot cheaper too. So we have to look at in terms of how we access other people's money, so to speak, and still maintain control over the development and to our advantage. Because if I have someone that comes in as an engineer and advising local contractors, this is something where that's a knowledge transfer, and you always want to have that situation in terms of being able to move on to that next thing, as he was saying, to build your CV, so we can move now and say go Grenada and build our hospital because we have true capacity to be able to do it.
You agree with all of this, Washasha?
I concur totally, but I would just add a winker, because what we're talking about obviously is economic empowerment. But I think what's also coming out of the discussion, and I'm very glad to hear these money people, coming so strong tonight, because what we need, I feel, is more education. And when I say education, I mean education across the board. We're talking about front-end, we're talking about skill sets, we're talking about transfer skills, education. We need to make our people more knowledgeable at all levels, and what we're here discussing tonight. So I just wanted to add that as my little tie-up swap. Education. Critical.
Pamela, the education that Shasha is talking about really has to be done in a structured manner. And when we start to talk about things like the Small Business Bureau, those are like the simple things that should have been done a long time ago, but done in a substantive way. So when a person comes to deal with a business opportunity, because people have great ideas but don't have the requisite education and skill sets that we're talking about, you go to a place that can sit down and help you put that package together that can protect your interests locally and provide the financing, guidelines, direction, and those things to make things happen. So he's right on target, but just getting education is not that we have to, and this is the kind of thing that as a government now, you have to get serious about, and saying, look, if we are going to be developing this country and all people are going to be in the forefront, what are going to be the institutions, the tools, the areas to facilitate it and make sure that they're all in place? Because if it's not in place, when you don't do all the economic plan and do everything, who are you developing it for?
Exactly.
Question?
And I just wanted to tie that in there because, again, this goes back to why fronting is just, you're putting yourself at a disadvantage. If you don't learn how to properly run a business, you basically tied to somebody else in terms of they're the ones that are going to come up with the marketing plan, they're the ones that are going to build the clientele, they're the ones that are going to establish business relationships with the suppliers. So, you're tied to them more heavily than even though you own the 51%. So you might be abiding by whatever the law is, but in truth of the matter, the reality of the situation is that they're the ones running the show.
We don't have a front-end law right now. We don't have a front-end policy. I've been trained, I thought we did.
Okay.
And I went to the trade department because there are several instances where I thought that there were fronts and fronts that were having severe negative impact on our local business people, right? Only to find out that we don't really have a front-end policy. What would be a front-end policy? What if you had to formulate a front-end policy to preserve the economic opportunity for the people or the territory? This is going to go to Shane and I'm going to come to you.
Okay.
What would you put in place?
Well,
that would bridge the local foreign partnership relationship, but protect the local business from unscrupulous behavior from our own people particularly.
Yeah. Well, basically it is to look at the current commercial legislation that we have as far as what's there. I know Trade Department has drafted, they have in draft form new legislation that's supposed to regulate our business sector. So it is to look at what's in there. We also need to properly staff trade, because trade is supposed to be a regulator in terms of going out and monitoring, and they're severely understaffed when it comes to that aspect of it, and those things need to be looked at, and to make sure that a legitimate business is a legitimate business, and that there's no unfair competition, because again, that's part of what fronting creates, unfair competition, because somebody just is concerned about getting money. So once I'm making money and I'm getting a check, I'm not worrying about the impact now that it has on the bigger picture in the country, and also long term for you as an individual. So those are the type of things that we need to look at as terms of the legislation, making them stronger and making sure that those who enforce these laws have the capacity to do so.
In addition to what Shana is saying, the legislation side of it, I think on the administrative side, which we have been saying all night, you need to step it up. A trade department is fine, but I think you need a business bureau. You actually need the next step up that would have the various guidelines, the structure, and the legislation to enforce the policy, which we don't want fronting. That's the policy we're saying. So you need to be able to actually make these things happen. When you talk about them, you have to say we're going to do it.
What's your view? Well,
I'm going to be honest with you, right? In the BVI, we know exactly what we need to fix any problem we have. There is nothing that pops up around here that we don't know how to fix. It is whether we have the will and interest to fix it. If you want to deal with fronting, you put, as Shana said, a properly structured trade department, the requisite enforcement, tie in all the requisite aspects of business organization through trade, and you will resolve a lot of your problems. Because if you were, for instance, supposed to get up and say, well, okay, every time you renew your trade license, you tick off on a checklist a number of things, and did you go through all the checks and balances? Right now you arbitrarily just renew a trade license. You could be in defiance of every single law in this country, including the most simple things such as inland revenue with the taxes and those things, and those kind of things, and it doesn't make a difference. Now, those things are harsh. I know when I was FS, I specifically insisted that when you wanted to do a get-up-pity contract, you had to deal with your good standing. And you know the amount of money that collected for government and for Social Security, because you wanted that business opportunity, you had to meet the compliance of the laws, and revenue went up immediately because of it. It had some issues. We had to streamline things. We had to walk around it and massage it. But at the end of the day, it became a policy that eventually got accepted and moved on. And I was very unpopular for it in the instance, but government benefiting revenue from it. But not everything you're going to do is going to be popular. But that's what you're in a position to do. Do what's in the best interest of getting the government on the right order. And these are the kind of things that when you sit down, because I look at these things, and I have my grave concerns, because when you start to talk about how businesses function in the BVI, there is not enough structure in enough how government operates. So it's easy to manipulate government. It's easy to manipulate trade. It's easy to manipulate labor department. It is very easy to walk around the government. You can deal with one department and get something done, and don't study the rest of the government and continue to get through that department because they're not interlocked. And simple computer systems and checks and balances take care of those problems.
Okay, we got we open the phone lines. The number to call is on the screen, and the number to text is on the screen. So we could get some feedback from you. Now that answer was a perfect segue into procedure. Processes, government processes. And we want to start off, let me see, we'll start from the last time. Start from you, so I have to start from here this time. We want to start off talking about what, well, first of all, we have some procedures. We have procedures in trade licenses, we have procedures in immigration, labor, those types of procedures. But somehow they're not expeditious. They're not facilitating business growth. They're not facilitating business development. What can we do with those procedures, Brother Whitley, to strengthen them? How can we get a trade license faster? How can we get a work permit faster? How can we get immigration to go through the process faster while protecting our borders and so on? What are some of the procedural aspects of the economic development that needs to be looked at, needs to be changed, and needs to be developed?
Well, one of the things I have lamented about is that, first and foremost, a lot of this whole development and commerce related matters need to be under a different ministry. They need to have their own minister. You can't take and put under the Premier and Minister of Finance all of these types of issues, put them under one permanent secretary, probably have one division dealing with some of them, and expect to get them done. It is technically impossible. If you're serious about developing the BVI, trust me, you're going to have to separate out developing commerce from under the Premier's office, put it somewhere where you have a minister and people focusing on that as a way of dealing with business.
You have Ministry of Trade, Ministry of Development.
No, I'm saying they need to be under one minister. I'm not saying advocating multiple ministers.
Okay.
And I'm saying you develop, because then you need to focus on it. Just like how you sit down and say, okay, the Minister of Education focuses on education. The minister who deals with development and trade related and commerce issues, focus on that. So therefore, it is going to matter to that individual what happens when you go deal with trade, how trade affects work permits, how it affects inland revenue, social security related matters, and you think about all of these things when you're dealing with your whole development structure, how it impacts your infrastructure. Do you have the requisites in place to deal with all these things? All of these things are spread over about 5-6 ministries. And then they never speak to each other. So you develop one thing that impacts the other, or it doesn't have the requisite support in the other. The whole thing is chaos. So we have passed that level of planning. And when Shasha talking about with those integrated plans, the infrastructure, Carmen, is already there 10 plus years ago to solve these problems. These are not new things. Nobody fool you and think that what we're talking about out here as former civil servants is some rocket idea we're talking about. No, you could pull up a computer and hit bam, 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 and this could happen tomorrow. But the problem you have in the BVI, and if you want to be honest with it, the political directorate doesn't want to correct the situation because it is easy to just shift and do all sort of foolishness in the absence of proper structure. When
Do
you
they
have proper structure,
understand? Do they understand it?
they understand it and they're reaping the consequences of it now, because of a lot of other things that have been put in place were properly implemented. You talk about new procedures. I don't think we need new procedures right now. We just need to follow what's there. And that alone could correct half the problem.
What you got to say about that machine?
I agree wholeheartedly with what he's saying. And in addition to that, technology is something that we need to move the government into. We're in the 24th century, have computers on everybody's desk, some walking around with tablets. But yet, I can't sit in my office as a business person and find any government application online. I shouldn't have to walk into the office to pick up any application. So we're going to start streamlining processes. The first thing we need to do is start leveraging these millions of dollars of technology we have. Because if you want to apply, whether it's for work permit, trade license, check on the status of it, all these things can be done online. And it also helps to turn around the process faster in the department. Because it doesn't have to be somebody has the file, I can't find the file, and you have to come back tomorrow. You know, and these are the types of things that if we, as in terms of the public service, having a serious customer service oriented focus, you know, it's all about the customer. So I should be in Hong Kong. If I want to apply for a trade license, it's online, the laws are there, it gives me all the requirements, I can submit it and see a response within, say, 48 hours, confirming receipt. These are the things, as Alan said, if we are serious about moving the country forward, it has to start in there in terms of the administration and setting that policy in terms of telling the departments, no, this is where we want to get to. So we need to start moving in that direction and structure ourselves accordingly.
Okay. Let's go to the phone, Shasha. Thank you very much for calling Spotlight. Go right ahead, please.
Very good, I'm having a very interesting stuff tonight.
Thank you, my brother.
Thank you.
I want to talk to Mr. Ridley. I want to ask you a question.
Go right ahead.
Mr. Ridley,
Yes.
I've been in business for the last 2 years as a local businessman. And we've been suffering because we have no system to move forward business. So I wanted to get some idea how we can move forward because we're going to have not attention to small businesses and eventually a lot of small business getting a lot of problems. So I want to know how you give advice to move forward with this business.
All right, thank you very much for that call, my brother.
So,
Listen,
Thank
yes,
you.
good. Great question.
Well, actually, that's very easy. First and foremost, what we're going to have to do when it comes to dealing with the whole issue of business development, especially in the small business area, is first and foremost look at developing what I was referring to earlier, the whole issue of a business bureau, where from the simplest aspect from your concept, your thought, and checking on the feasibility of it and going through a business plan process with trained persons. That's another thing I made reference to in other discussions. They have to be trained individuals who know how to develop these plans, have to make sure they don't have ulterior motives when they go in there and those kind of things. And even with those things, you have to have checks and balances and develop the plan. Whatever this bureau is doing, it must be done in conjunction with the National Bank as a funding tool, because it makes no sense to have these elaborate plans and then you got the problem with these commercial banks and this new liquidity crisis they have that they're not lending any money. The government is going to have to take lead, because we are going to have to develop our own economy. So we are going to have to say, okay, here's the business bureau, here's where you can go to get help to develop your plan or reassess your business or whatever. And when you're done with that, that should be almost a pre-approved business plan, business loan, where when you go to the National Bank, it already meets a certain amount of criteria and move forward and push the window with the banks. Because once the National Bank starts to move and develop, the commercial banks have to follow.
Yeah.
Anybody want to answer that, add to it, make a comment?
Well,
Same
basically,
question.
in terms of the people think of the Small Business Bureau as something that is just a whim, but when you look at the Small Business Administration in the U.S. and what it does for the business sector, small businesses is the backbone of the American economy. And in terms of giving people the access to information, education, the business loan facility, that is something that is very key, because I use the example of the drinking water machines. If somebody had that idea and they had access to that money, that is something that would have been locally owned. But it is about empowering, again, like what Sasha talked about, giving the people what it is they need to make these things a reality. And it's not just talk, and not just 1 or 2 years in business either. We're talking about being successful in terms of 5-10 years down the road. They're still there and growing.
Well, Jamaica, the comment that I want to make and what I want to get across to the general public out there tonight is, here on the panel tonight you have 3 former civil servants. We're the people who have really been down in the trenches, working on a lot of the things that we're speaking about here tonight. And as Alan said, a lot of these things are just there sitting on a shelf. You see the little pamphlet I'm handing out. I make it very clear that we can make tremendous progress in this country, but you need to elect leaders that understand the things that we're here speaking about tonight, and actually, as you're hearing, have the ways, the plans, the means to actually do something about it.
A couple of weeks ago, Spotlight had a business views program, and one of the community business leaders spoke of having to go to a politician, one of y'all, to get something done. If you have a challenge in the civil service, where a particular civil servant, for one reason or the other, don't expedite your process or deny you your rights, that you have to go to a politician and give the politician this inordinate amount of power, as if he's doing you a favor or she's doing you a favor. What's your view on that, and how would you solve that problem?
Well, it depends on what it is, because sometimes people go to the politicians to bypass the system. And if it's a situation where you're saying that the department isn't being cooperative, there is checks and balances in the public service that the public needs to be educated on in some cases. Their easy recourse tends to be, we'll go to the politician and basically have them make a phone call and put some pressure on them. But as a responsible political leader, I'm paying a department head $70,000 a year, and we need to give them the benefit of the doubt in some of the situations that if they deny a particular situation or they're not doing their job, we follow the process as well. Because I think a lot of times we convolute the whole thing by working outside the system and then expect the system to work the way it's supposed to and not move forward.
Okay. Thank you for calling Spotlight. Go right ahead, please. Yes, sir.
I have a question I want to ask Mr. Wiki. It's very nice to notice what we're talking about tonight. I want to find out how he says he's running for council. Everybody from Anigari to West End to get from that. And everyone, including me, and decide that he wanted to council, and I still be keeping myself. So why do you respond to that?
All right, thank you for that call. Okay.
That's a matter with regards to my business activity, and whatever reference that he is making to anything that regards my business activity, I have already engaged in sufficient negotiations and plans surrounding how those things are being addressed. There's no single person that I am doing business with is not cognizant of exactly, because when I started to run for council, I made sure I took the time and effort to go and deal with all the requisite matters that I'm dealing with to avoid any such conflict. So any little personal pet peeve anybody wants to come and call about, I can easily refute. I have had this happen to me on the street. I've had this happen to me elsewhere. And, this is just a matter of how you do business. And if you want to bring my business on to the show here tonight, that's entirely up to you.
Okay. Let me read a text here. Don't worry, Alan, cause back then you helped the poor people. Somebody voting for you.
That's you.
So Alan, why didn't you choose to run at large? Because what you are saying can help the country on a whole with its economic dilemma now.
Well, whether I'm at large or in a district really doesn't prohibit me from being able to execute the things I'm talking about. The specific reason I'm in a district really deals with the matter of the fact that when I weighed both options and the committees surrounding me weighed both options, it was felt that it's more needed for me to be in that district for a lot of different reasons, more so than to be on the national agenda, or national arena, sorry.
Okay. Policies can be put in effect, but they won't be done because the same policy makers have businesses that will be affected. Conflict of interest.
Yes. There are laws. Get one thing about the system that we live in, EduWink. A lot of people does blame the system, but to me, it's sort of like religion. All the religion them perfect, but it's human beings basically dealing with them. There are checks and balances in government to address conflict of interest, and we shouldn't allow that type of thing to take place. That's straight. That's my answer.
And as candidates, if and when you become elected officials, how are you going to manage yourselves, conduct yourselves, that you are transparent and persons can know that there is you don't have conflict of interest, or you are following the policies just like the common man?
Well, I intend to lead by example. Like you say, open, transparent. Those are some of the things that I have right here in my platform. I talk about, let's say, giving contracts, which seem to be a big issue here in the country. I'm saying if I'm elected, for instance, I would use an open and a transparent process to give out those contracts. If we're giving out, let's say, plumbing contracts and we have 5 plumbers on the list, we would come down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and when we reach to the bottom, we'll go back to the top. You know, you have to have simple but transparent things in place that people can see.
Yeah, that's true, and I think really and truly to Punchy, there's a lot of work that has gone into the level of detail and description and processes of accountability that you have to go through to deal with it. For instance, the other day, I'm sure all the other candidates went through where we had to go to
The registrar of interest.
and actually
For the cabinet office.
And we all had to declare every single business activity we are doing with the government well before nomination day. So as far as I am seeing it, there are a number of things that you have to go and declare that you're dealing with first and foremost before you could even be in the political arena. And really and truly, when it comes down to the actual execution of government business, that's what you have accounting officers for. And the accounting officers inside the government, once you have declared your interests, whether it's family, otherwise, and what's not, that accounting officer is then responsible for making sure that, you know, those things are executed in accordance with the rules.
Okay. If you have a call, put the calls through. Just send the calls through as they come in, please.
I wanted to go back, because we got some calls. I just wanted to go back to the whole, I think we were talking about the process.
Yes, the process.
Right. So I just wanted to weigh in a little on that. For a very long time, my experience is more on the development side of things. I've spent a lot of years on the planning authority, the national parks, technical review committee, project planning, that side of things, right? And for a very long time, we have been advocating, and as Alan has said, there are things actually sitting there on the shelf for what we call the one-stop shop with government when it comes to development. Shana also spoke about some of the initiatives. I know one of my brethren, he liked to talk about the whole e-commerce is his big thing. I mean, we have people that have actually developed these things to almost a fine point.
Just to press the button.
Right, but so if you want that button press on the 7th of November, you have to vote for people who are going to press that button.
That's right.
Yes, man, that's what we're talking about.
Issuing, in terms of processes, issuing trade licenses, should a BVI lander be able to go down to the trade department with his passport or birth certificate and a picture or whatever, some requirement, and pick up his trade license right there on the spot?
No.
It happens in other countries where it can't happen here.
Well,
I did it in Manhattan.
I'm not saying that you can't do it, you know. But first and foremost, if you're not trained to be in a particular business, why did you just arbitrarily get a trade license? There are certain checks and balances you want to make sure. For instance, you know nothing about electrical work. I know nothing about electrical work. I all of a sudden become an electrician because I walk down and say that I can be an electrician. The next thing you know, I wire up somebody else and kill them.
Yeah.
So, there's no business that you can come and tell me that you're not going to have to require some kind of qualifications to deal with.
No, you have. If you're going to be an electrician, you have to have an electrician's license. I'm talking about getting a business.
What kind of business? Any business?
And
But being an electrician is a business.
Nah, but there would have to be something in place where.
Okay, you want to be a financial consultant. You're going to advise people on money. You should just walk down the road and you don't even know accounts.
No, I would go into the business of financial accounting, but when you come to my business, you would have people who can advise.
How would I know that?
So we require a business plan.
You would have to have some kind of enforcement.
But then you can't just walk in and get it. You have to go through some due process and some checks and balances.
You ain't fronting right now.
I was about to get to that, because this is the problem that we have currently. I had a conversation the other day, right? And this goes back to construction industry. where people say we have contractors and we have contractors. Okay?
Yeah.
And it is a detriment to the quality of work where you have people just going in, getting a business license basically, and not really concerned about the industry in which they're saying they want to operate. So if trade needs 24 hours to turn around something, in terms of doing some kind of checks and balances, you have to allow for that. If you could get it turned around quicker, you know, but it is about due process, and if due process in Manhattan can happen in 8 hours, happy for them. But it is something where we have to take very seriously, because it's something for me that concerns me, that funding happens because, you know, in a lot of cases the form says business plan, but they're not always presented, and there's no opportunity in terms of who does the evaluation to say whether this plan is really legitimate and can actually go forward, you know. So we need to look at those processes in there as well.
So I need to know how long a trade license should take.
What's acceptable for you as a customer?
You know, I want it right away.
You want it right away?
What I would say is I would manage your expectation, right? Based on the answer given by Alan and Shayna, once you have the requisite requirements, and then as Shayna said, we need to have a period of assessment, and then you get a response. Whatever the shortest time that could be, you will get it. That would be my answer.
Okay. Thank you for calling Spotlight. Go right ahead, please.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good night.
On the topic of trade license, I think I should have some formula in place where within a 6 months period of time, you're supposed to be able to call somebody back and say, well, you're not qualified. Not after 5-6 years, you're wondering and pondering. They need to put things, regulation in place to govern the trade license department and time frame that you should have as a reply back, because as you said, you answered the question. If I try to get a business, I need to hire the right people for the business for it to operate and function properly. Now it's up to trades to put people in place to vote and investigate and see what's taking place, and instead of sitting in the office and waiting for feedback. They need to have investigators, trade investigators, or people qualified for that particular job to go there and see if the people are doing what they say they're doing.
All right. Thank you very much for that call. That's what I'm talking about. You need enforcement. You know, you can't make the innocent soul for the guilty.
No,
She hit
we
the nail on the
say
head.
that. Yeah.
You need enforcement.
But that turnaround time too also happens because there's a bottleneck. If you have one person doing all the approvals and there's no third saying,
then they gotta go to the
if the
premier.
department approves a certain level, and then these above a certain have to go up to the minister. We need to look at how we can make that process work better, because it bottlenecks basically at the ministry.
But also, Ejibinga Tui goes back to something that Alan said earlier. You know, you have to have a wider plan. You have to have a national plan. If we're trying to grow the economy, if we're trying to do certain things, we should know. Again, managing people's expectations. People should know what direction the country is going. Not just somebody from, you know, outside. We in here should know. If I have a little bit of money I want to spend, I need to know what's going on so I could make an intelligent decision.
Okay. Thank you for calling Spotlight. Go right ahead, please.
Okay. You go to the issue.
Yes.
I don't believe you look at tailors. Let me show you something of an example, right?
You come back here and get
So
it.
election is supposed to be a very delicate piece of thing that people apply for. I will show you this. For instance, I just started out a $1 million job 2 years ago. I didn't have to set up, but I showed you. We all know that there is rough trade which is going on. And I have X amount of sponsor. I sponsor the guy now work for them. Now, I remember having one situation where she was servant of trade license. Sponsoring a lot of people I want to work for them. This is a very, very critical situation. Now, let me tell you why I see this. After this morning, a lot of people come and like that to the poor. And I ask the question, who sponsored you? And when you tell me, I was surprised, how long have you been here? They just came, they just get the permit, they haven't worked with nobody yet, they're looking for John Ray. This is very critical. This is one of the things that we're looking into very, very seriously. The
let's get a response. Thanks a lot for that call. It sounds like corruption, right? And crime is an issue. We ain't talking about it right now, but certainly this is an economic issue, a criminal economic issue.
Yeah.
If I could put it that way. How would y'all deal with the various departments in their performances and making sure that you reduce the level of law-breaking activity that's going on in all these various departments, particularly our gatekeeping departments of customs, immigration, and labor. Those are three of our most important departments that we having some serious challenges with as we speak. How would y'all deal with those types of situations? What would you advocate for as elected representatives? Let me see. I think I can give you a first. I don't know why.
The situation that you're dealing with, first and foremost, you have a lot of processes are already in place in terms of the human resources department in government, and a lot of ways in which you can deal with those things internally. I think a lot of what is happening now within government really has to do with individuals not really wanting at like heads of department levels, different sort of tears down, taking the requisite corrective actions that need to be taken before things get out of hand. So a lot of things I personally feel could be eliminated within the auspices of these departments before they escalate to all of these particular situations. And when you get dealing with those kind of things on that kind of level, you can really resolve a lot of issues, because ultimately at the end of the day, you really want to deal with your own situations within the auspices of your department and within the auspices of the government and within the auspices of your country. In other words, you want to lick your own child. You don't want to have to be having that dealt with otherwise, because at that point in time you start to lose control.
Yeah. He spoke about the situation where work permits are being granted, but there's no real jobs for these people. So there is an issue there with enforcement. And I think one of the things that, again, technology is something that we have to start to leverage, along with having the right people in the right positions. Because if immigration has an issue in terms of monitoring who's in the country, how long they're in the country, when are we supposed to escort them out, to put it that way. Because there are laws. People can't come and just stay however long they want. You know, there are laws that need to be regulated. So we need to look at where is the system broken. You know, is it an issue that we do not have enough manpower? So we need to address that. Is it that we need to look at the legislation to give them the teeth they need to basically be out there, you know, protecting the borders at all costs? Because when you look and you drive around the roundabout in the morning and you see basically a walk gang waiting to be picked up, it concerns a lot of people, but nobody has really put out there, this is a solution. You hear a lot of times people saying you can't touch that because the politicians, this, that, and the other. You know, but we have to be serious about economic activity in the country in terms of if it's job opportunities for Virgin Islanders that are being, you know, it's diluted because we have persons in here that are not legitimately employed, and that problem is being created by us ourselves. We have to check ourselves as far as what our priorities are for our country and why these things are allowed to happen.
Okay. I want to go to a new question for you, but why we haven't heard you talking about the landfill in Seacoast Bay and the filling in of the mangrove?
Well, I don't think it's a matter that I haven't been speaking about these things. The whole thing in Seacoast Bay actually came about during my last few days, and when the call came to me, I did what I always do. I followed what the rules said, and I instructed town planning who was calling. Again, people must understand there are laws, there are checks, there are balances. If you want to, let's say, reclaim, there's a process. You apply. You may have to do an environmental impact assessment, and it goes before the technical review committee, it goes to planning authority, that goes to executive council, the one for the seabed, you get your permission. If anywhere along the way none of that is in place, then we take the requisite action. In the case of the Seacoast Bay, used to be a stop order, but under the new legislation, I think it's a compliance notice was served. But stepping back again, I think a lot of this stuff goes back to the whole issue of planning. Okay, you have to be a situation where we actually leading by example. We have to be serious about these things. You can't say you want to protect, you want to preserve, but then you allow certain things to happen. It's either we're going to have to say, look, this is the areas that we will allow these type of activities. These are the areas we're going to protect. These are the areas we're going to preserve. That's called planning Ejewinka. We cannot continue to just respond and ad hoc we react. No, we have to get beyond that. Okay.
Okay, quickly. We finally at 3 o'clock. How does the panel? I appreciate the image I am seeing of individuals from different parties. How does the panel feel about a coalition government?
How we feel about coalition government?
Yeah.
This question has been going on since July 4th in terms of with our alliance. And what I've been telling people is that we need to elect the right people. When you get into the House of Assembly, I'm going to make it short. When you get into the House of Assembly, this is where we get in trouble as far as having all these party lines. You actually have a coalition government in your House of Assembly, and that is how the country needs to be run. If it happens that we have to, in terms of structure, say form a majority from the different parties, it's a good thing for the country.
In terms of the issue of the coalition government, for me, first and foremost, the thing is to get elected. And most of what I know everybody is dealing with, whether independent or other parties, have to do with platforms and different issues and the like that they want to bring to the forefront. And once those like tonight are brought to the forefront and people make their determinations, it's now fostering the best combination to run the country. And whatever it takes to do it is fine by me.
That's good.
They will advise the people, as they say, is the advice of the Most High, and whoever the people choose, we are going to have to work together. Of course, I'd like to be in a lot, but whoever they choose, we have to work together. And I think that the kind of discussion you're hearing here tonight is plain and it's clear to see that we could work together.
All right, you have 1 minute. Go.
Well, people of the Virgin Islands, my name is Bertrand Washasha Exletsom, and I'm an independent territorial at-large candidate to the second House of Assembly. I'm asking for your support on election day. When you go to the polls, I want you to look for my symbol. It's the old soursop. Put the X for Washasha X right next to the soursop, because you know what? The soursop don't fall far from the tree.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Shayna.
Again, thank you for having us. I am Shayna Smith, one of the territorial candidates. We have a team of 4 persons with the People Patriotic Alliance. Our symbol is the humanity tree, which is a tree made up of everybody. And it's, as you heard tonight, there is a lot of work to be done, but if we have a plan, we can make it happen. So on November 7th, use your 5 votes wisely and vote for the best interest of the country.
Brother As Punch, as usual, thanks for having me here. I'd like to thank all the viewers who have tuned in this evening, and to my fellow colleagues, I enjoyed the debate, and I look forward to seeing more of this over the next couple of days and weeks. I'm representing the Party of the People in the 7th District. I would like at this point in time to ask everyone under my voice to listen carefully to what has been said by all of us, and in particular, when it comes to the 7th District, there are a number of things that I've already put in place and are putting in place to make sure that we get the best representation in the 7th District. So on November 7th, vote for the interconnected chain of human beings that represents POP. And remember, love thy neighbor like thyself.
Thank you, my brother and sister. My brothers and sister, for coming to Spotlight. It's been a great experience. This is kind of new for me.
You walked and chewed gum well.
Yeah, this is kind of new for me, and thanks for making it enjoyable.
Thank you.
And complying with everything and being so brotherly and sisterly, showing that love for each other, and that was a great thing. I think that's what we need in our country, instead of all the rancor, like Mr. O'Neill say. I like that. all the rancor, So I really appreciate you guys taking the time to come and have this discussion. And next week we're gonna try to get more candidates, getting candidates to come and Spotlight, like pulling teeth. It's rough. You call up and people.
Willing to come face the people.
I don't know what the problem is. I think it's me. I just a bad head or something like that. But we like to get more people to come on and talk about, discuss with each other their views and their philosophies and their plans, so that the electorate could get a sense of who would be the best representatives of the country, because right now we really need the best and the brightest of what we have. I mean, there's no doubt about it. We really need
time is mandated.
Yeah, time mandate that we get the best and the brightest, and that's how we're trying to do. Give you the option to choose, and if you say that you want to represent the people, and if you say you have the people's best interests at heart, come and let the people see, what you're about. I'm not gonna bite your head off. I'm not here to try to discredit anybody. I just want to bring the people, their views, the politicians' views, to the public, so they could have the opportunity to make intelligent and informed decisions. So I want to thank you all for your words of encouragement. Thank you for watching the Spotlight, and any suggestions that you may have, you can email them to jtvspotlight@yahoo.com. I'm Edjuenka, reminding you that when the spotlight is on, you see the facts. Peace and blessings.
Spotlight is brought to you by the National Bank of the Virgin Islands, The Radio Doctor, Tortola Concrete Limited, and Varieties and Electronics.